Good morning, students. Good morning to all. And last day we have studied about the rural indebtedness. And the continuation of these lessons, today we will study about the rural infrastructures and some of the other concepts also. Rural infrastructures. Already we have studied many of the opportunity of the rural infrastructures. So in this rural infrastructures, many of the concepts will come: the rural housing, rural market, rural electricians, and the rural roads, educations, hospital facilities. All these things are considered as a rural infrastructures. First, if you are considering the rural housings, the housing is one of the basic needs of every family, but the provisions of better housing facilities increases the productivity of labor, because already we have studied one of the basic necessity of life in every person is shelter, and nowadays we are calling as house. So the housing problem is getting aggravated due to rapid adaptations of nuclear families. The housing does not mean provisions of house alone, but also proper water supply, good sanitations, proper disposal of sewage, etc. The problem of housing can be tackled by the development of low cost technology in house construction. The provision of adequate housing, finance, and provisions of land sites to landless workers in rural areas. Next, rural markets. The rural market refers to the infrastructures created to buy and sell the products produced in rural areas, and also to purchase the needed products and farm inputs produced in urban and other regions. So, as we have studied already, so the market facilities is one of the important factors, and in rural areas also is one of the important factor to improving the rural area is rural market. So in this rural market, all the items produced by the producers is the local entrepreneurs. The rural marketing is still defective as farmers, lack of bargaining power, long chain of middlemen, lack of organizations, insufficient storage facilities, poor transport facilities, absence of grading, inadequate of formations, and poor marketing arrangements. So these all problems always make the rural peoples or the rural areas as the factor of non-improvement. So anyway, if the rural areas also require the good rural market, but the rural market also has some of the problems as we have studied above. Next, rural roads. If any of the peoples or if any of the foreigners want to make the investment on the rural side, the good rural roads also will be is needed. So the rural roads also consisting in the rural infrastructures. If the governments are taking some of the effort to improving the transport facilities, it will require some of the good road facilities also. If there is no good road facilities, what will happen? Some of the problem is arised to distributing the goods from the consumers to producers, or the hands of producers to ultimate consumers. The road transport is an important constituent of the transport system. The rural roads constitute the very lifeline of rural economy, because most of the marketing or the distributions or the productions or purchasing the raw materials also require the good road facilities, and because of that only the time utility also will be going to maintain. A well constructed road network in rural area would bring several benefits, including the linking of remote villages with urban centers. So even if the rural areas entrepreneurs want to purchasing any of the commodities or raw materials from the urbanized areas, the good road facilities is important. So it helps the farmers to bring their produce to the urban market and to have access to distant market and other services. Next, rural electricians. So nowadays, so without electricians, no producers can produce any of the product, and no entrepreneurs can able to start at any of the industries. And nowadays, the facilities and the advantages and the uses of the electrical also is improving day by day. So even the rural peoples, all the agriculture, the farmers also using the electrical or the electronical thinking in their uses as very abroad. So the rural electricians refers to providing the electrical power to the rural areas. So the main aims of rural electricians are to provide electricity to agricultural operations and to enhance the agricultural productivity. So if we want to improve the productivity in this agricultural also needed the electrician power for the irrigation facilities and some of the other facilities. So, in order to improve the facility, the supply of electricity is almost free for agricultural purpose in many of the states. And the electricity tariff charged in rural areas is kept very low when we are comparing to the urbanized areas. And the farmers also have some of the subsidy for using the electricity in their agriculture purpose. There are some of the more factors hindering the rural electricians. If the government wants to providing the electrician facilities or electrical facilities to the rural areas, some of the problems are there. So what are the problems or what are the hindrings are there to stop to providing the electrical facilities to the rural area means under the headings we can easily understand. First one is lack of funds. The generations and transmission of power involves huge expenditure and the fund allocation is low because most financial facilities is needed to providing the electrical facilities to the rural areas because the rural areas always located so far away from the urbanized areas. So because of that the government have to allot more funds, and if some of the peoples are not having the interest to receiving the electrical powers or electrical facilities from the government side. Next, interstate disputes. As there are interstate disputes in managing power projects, power distribution is affected. So the managing the power project is one of the important problems to providing the or distributing the power supply. So this is also will be affect the electrical facilities to providing the rural areas. Next, uneven terrain. As rural topography is uneven without proper connections, developing a new lines are costly and difficult. So in our urbanized areas, many of the roads and streets always will be as a paralyzed. But in these rural areas, so the distance from one home to another one of the home is very distance. So by providing the electrical facilities, it will also require more expenditures. So because of the uneven terrain, so the workers of in electrical board and some of the government also will not have the interested to providing the electrical facilities. Next, high transmission losses. So the transmission loss is power distribution is almost 25 percentage in rural areas. So the transmission of power also will be lead to loss of high transmissions. Next, power theft. So unauthorized use and diversions of power are evil practices adopted by affluent peoples that hinders the rural electricians process. So some of the local entrepreneurs or the dominated persons also will be thief to the power from the rural peoples and the rural areas. So because of that, the government and some of the factors also is there to hindering the providing the electrical facilities to the rural areas. Next, requirement of rural development. Why the rural development is must need mean? Some of the requirements are there. First one is the efforts needed to be made to raise farm and non-farm rural real incomes. So many of the farm and non-farms are existing in these rural areas. So if the farm and non-farm organizations are improved only, so the rural also will be developed. Next, investment. The investment in basic infrastructure and social services need to be increased. Next, the coordinated and the integrated programs for solving the present problems and to achieve sustainable development had to be designed. Next, understanding leaders. The persons and the leaders with an understanding of reality of rural problems and with the required foresight vision should be consulted while designing the development programs. And the next chapter, chapter 11, Tamil Nadu economy. So here nothing is there to explaining more. So some of the informations only is there about the Tamil Nadu economy. So some of the point I will take and the remaining portions you can easily read, you can understand. So the economic and the social development of states in India are not uniform. So wide regional disparities etc. along with the states. The western region and the southern regions are better off than the other regions. Tamil Nadu is geographically 11th largest and populations wise third largest. So geographically, if you are considering, if you are comparing with the other state, so Tamil Nadu is geographically 11th largest places. And if you are taking population wise, the Tamil Nadu has the third places. The Tamil Nadu fares well with many achievements. It stands to second in terms of contribution to GDP. So comparing with the another states, the Tamil Nadu only providing many contributions to increasing the gross domestic product. In the social and health sector also Tamil Nadu performance is better than many other states and better than national average in terms of health, higher educations and the other sources also. So if you are considering the highlights of Tamil Nadu, the growth of state gross domestic product has been among the fastest in India since 2005. Since the 2005, the Tamil Nadu contributes the large amount. The Tamil Nadu contains a smaller proportions of India's poor populations. So if you want to tell, many of the achievements are there in Tamil Nadu economy. Next, the performance of Tamil Nadu economy. So some of the states like Gujarat and Maharashtra seem to perform well in some of the economic indicators. So we have to note one thing, the Kerala is the top in literacies. The reasons for relative success of Tamil Nadu lie in extending social policies to cover most of the populations. For instance, the public distribution system, midday meals, and public health infrastructure have near universal coverage. Next, the natural resources of Tamil Nadu. So, I think already you may have studied in your previous class or your previous years. So, Tamil Nadu has more natural resources. So, among the natural resources, some of the resources we can understand. First, if you are considering the water resources, the Tamil Nadu is not endowed with the rich natural resources compared to other states. It accounts for their percentage of water source, 4% of land area against 6% of populations. Next, the mineral resources. So the Tamil Nadu also has a few mining projects based on titanium, lignite, magnesite, graphite and limestone and granite and bauxite. So not only these type of the resources, so many of the other resources also we have. The first one is the naval lignite corporations that has led development of large industrial complex around Neyveli in Kudalur district with thermal power plant, fertilizers and carbonization plants. Next, populations. So we know very well about the populations. So already we have studied the population is also considered as a human resources. This is also called as a human capital. So instead of increasing the others capital, so we have more human resource capital. The Tamil Nadu stands 6 in populations with 7.21 crore against India. Next, the density of populations. The Tamil Nadu is the most urbanized state with 48.4 percentage of urban populations against 31.5 percentage for India as a whole. The sex ratio also. Sex ratio means the number of female per 100 males. Per 100 males, how many of the females are there in one state is considered as a sex ratio. The balanced sex ratio implies improvement in quality of life of female populations. The sex ratio in Tamil Nadu is nearing balance with 1995, which is far better compared to most of the states and all India level. The Tamil Nadu stands third next only to Kerala state and Puducherry Union Territory in sex ratio. So like that the infant mortality rate, mortality before completing 1 year. The Tamil Nadu is well ahead of national average and other states of infant mortality rate. Next, the literacy. The literacy rate of Tamil Nadu is higher than in many states. So after the Kerala, the Tamil Nadu only is considered as a high literacy ratio. Next, agriculture. So as we have studied in our Indian economy, so the Tamil Nadu peoples always has many potentials and productivity to produce the many crops and cultivate. The Tamil Nadu with the 7 agroclimatic zones and varied soil types is better suited for the productions of fruits, vegetables, spices, plantation crops, flowers and medical plants. The state is the largest producer of loose flowers and the third largest producer of fruits. The Tamil Nadu has historically been an agricultural state. At present, Tamil Nadu is the India's second biggest producer of rice, next only to the West Bengal. So the Tamil Nadu is in Tamil Nadu one of the districts are there. It was considered as the perfect area to producing and protecting the rice. So food grain productions. The rice productions dominates among food grain productions with 79.49 lakhs tons on 24. Next to the productivity position of Tamil Nadu and India. The government of Tamil Nadu lays emphasis on agricultural productions and productivity. As a result, Tamil Nadu tops in productivity in food crops as well as non-food crops among the states in India. Like that, the industries. So Chennai is sometimes referred to as the health capital of India or the banking capital of India, having attracted investment from international finance corporations, the World Bank. It is also called as a Detroit of Asia. So just you have to note this point. It is also come to as a GK and it will be the one of the important one word questions. The Detroit of Asia is Chennai. The Tamil Nadu has a network of about 110 industrial park estates that offer developed plots with supporting infrastructures also. And these industries also providing many employment opportunity to the all others peoples even in this rural and other areas. Next, in these industries, if you are considering the Tamil Nadu has more large scale industries and the small scale industries and many type of the industries. Like that, some of the tourisms. So the tourism is also one of the important factors to improve the development of Tamil Nadu economy. The Tamil Nadu has since ancient past been a hub of tourism. Okay, students, as I told already, so in this chapter 11, nothing is there to explaining more. Some of the informations, the data only is there. So just I'm thinking to stop. So just if you are reading, you can easily understand it. Some of the data and the information only is there about the Tamil Nadu economy. Just you read. If you have any doubt, please ask me. Thank you.